Trump's economy, Tom Homan, what an oncologist eats to reduce cancer risk, and more. A news story written by Jamie Ross and Hannah Jewell and read by Rebecca, an AI-generated voice. 1. The White House is declaring victory on turning around the economy. Why? Officials point to a record-breaking stock market and surprisingly strong inflation and jobs reports. But these positive signals are unevenly felt and skewed toward the wealthy. What Americans say, the prices of everyday essentials, like housing and healthcare, are at the top of voters' concerns. Affordability is the buzzword of the moment. Here's why. 2. Border czar Tom Homan said a small security force will remain in Minnesota. Days after declaring an end to Operation Metro Surge, Homan said some federal officers will stay behind to support immigration operations and respond to protests. In a school district near Minneapolis, students kept being detained by immigration authorities. So schools started taking an aggressive approach to protecting families. 3. The race to succeed Mitch McConnell shows how Republicans have soured on him. In Kentucky, 3 GOP candidates are keeping their distance from the longtime Senate Majority Leader. One ran an ad showing a cardboard cutout of McConnell in the trash. Other key races to watch. A handful of congressional primaries this year could show where Republicans, Democrats, and the U.S. are headed. Keep an eye on these 6 contests. A microcosm of chaos. Political disagreements are tearing this small town apart. Exclusive. 4. This NPR host claims Google stole his voice for an AI podcast tool. Meet David Green. He's a public radio veteran who felt completely freaked out when he heard the voice of Google's Notebook LM. It sounded just like him. Listen here. He's convinced he's been ripped off. Green is suing Google, alleging it replicated his voice without payment or permission for the podcast tool. Google denies his claims. 5. Changes in a Florida ocean current could wreak havoc worldwide. How? If the Florida current is slowing down, it could mean the Atlantic's larger circulation system is weakening. That could cause floods, droughts, and sea rise, among other impacts. Will it happen? Climate scientists are at odds. They largely agree the system may weaken over this century as the world warms, but differ on whether it is already slowing down. 6. An oncologist told us how he eats to reduce his cancer risk. In his work, Mikkael A. Sekeres is often asked by patients whether there are any changes they can make to their diets that lower their chances of developing cancer later in life. Luckily, the answer is yes. He recommends these 4 dietary changes. Personally, he says he rarely eats fast food, avoids processed meats, and has eliminated sugary drinks. 7. Southwest fans are mad about changes at the airline. Last month, Southwest switched to standard seat assignments from its old free-for-all model. In 2025, it started charging fees for checked bags, which used to be free. Now, some infuriated travelers are calling for a return to the old ways, complaining about a lack of overhead bin space and young children being seated away from parents. And now, is your relationship in trouble? Watch out for the 4 horsemen of conflict. Plus, why love doesn't have to be romantic to improve your life. Catch up with The 7 every morning. Download the Post app and turn on alerts for The 7. Sign up for the newsletter.
Republicans worry party will not do enough to address costs before midterms. By Al Weaver. Some Senate Republicans are warning that the party is not doing enough to address affordability heading into the midterm elections, with hopes of passing more big-ticket items this year quickly fading away. Legislating has been difficult in this Congress, with fractious Republicans holding only a narrow majority, and is only expected to slow further in an election year. And President Trump last week poured cold water on the possibility of a second massive GOP-only bill, saying in an interview that we have gotten everything passed that we need. Some in the party think that is a mistake, and worry that the GOP does not have an ambitious enough legislative agenda for the rest of the year aimed at driving down costs, which is expected to be a top issue for voters in November. We are not going to win the midterm by going to the American people and saying, look, we passed 11 out of 12 appropriations bills, and we confirmed all of President Trump's nominees, said Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana. The American people do not care. That is not what, when moms and dads lie down to sleep at night and cannot, that is not what they are worried about. They are worried about the cost of living. In their minds, they are tired of selling blood plasma to go grocery shopping. Kennedy has been a leading voice in favor of Republicans taking a second crack at a bill via budget reconciliation, a process that allows them to bypass the filibuster and pass a bill without any Democratic votes, to deal with items they were not able to fit into their previous reconciliation measure. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I still think that what we ought to be doing is true reconciliation. I really think that that is what we ought to be focused on right now, he continued. I just want to do something. Doing nothing is very hard. The 2026 agenda, however, is shaping up to be far different than last year's, which saw the upper chamber spend vastly more time in session than usual as they ushered through some of Trump's top priorities. Instead, the calendar allots significantly more time for lawmakers to spend in their home states. This means the congressional to-do list is far less ambitious and is headlined by must-pass items, including government funding, the Farm Bill, and the annual National Defense Authorization Act. Are we doing enough? We are not doing anything, said Senator Tommy Tuberville, Republican, who is running to become the next governor of Alabama. Everybody's working on getting elected. Trump's comments dismissing a second bill marked a blow for congressional Republicans, including Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, who has been meeting with committee chairs as recently as last month about a possible patent. And getting bills through Congress outside, the reconciliation process has proved exceedingly difficult. In the House, Johnson can afford to lose only one GOP vote on any party line package, and in the Senate, deepening distrust and divisions between Republicans and Democrats have made the minority party increasingly leery about helping push legislation over the 60-vote threshold. That still has not dissuaded some Republicans from wanting to give it a go. I see it as a missed opportunity, one Senate GOP member said, pointing to the rare chances the party has had in a unified government. Top Republicans, though, are turning their attention more to selling the legislation they have already passed, particularly Trump's big, beautiful bill. Republicans have spent months worrying they were not able to effectively communicate the party's signature legislative achievement to voters. especially as a historic government shutdown and endless fights over documents related to Jeffrey Epstein stole the spotlight. With tax filing season near and November on the horizon, Republicans believe it is imperative to sell the bill they already passed, which made many of the 2017 tax cuts permanent. I am more focused on selling what we do have, which is huge, said Senator Mike Rounds, Republican from South Dakota, who is up for re-election in the fall. It is a matter of focusing on that and getting our entire team working in the right direction to focus on the successes we have already had in the last year. One Senate GOP aide noted that upwards of 16 Senate Republicans held events focused on that sales job during January, kicking off what they expect will be a months-long effort. Additionally, some in the party are worried that an attempt to pass a second bill would only complicate the party's messaging and further drown out what they continue to believe is something they can run on throughout the year. There is also no consensus about what to include in a second partisan package. There had been chatter about a uniparty fix on health care after the failed negotiations with Democrats over a possible extension of the enhanced Obamacare subsidies that expired at the end of last year. We have to have a clear purpose that we are trying to accomplish that helps the American people. And there is not a clearly defined purpose right now to say this is what would do, and it could actually work through the parliamentarian process, said Senator James Lankford, Republican from Oklahoma, a member of GOP leadership. At times it gets confused. People are pursuing the tool rather than the task. Senator Eric Schmidt, Republican from Missouri, name-check items related to defense and housing authority that could garner inclusion, adding that rumors about the death of a second reconciliation bill have been greatly exaggerated. That would be welcomed by Kennedy and others. I'm not saying those bills are not important, Kennedy said about the NDAA and Farm Bill. I am just saying that you can multitask, and we ought to be passing some bills that are important to the American people. I can cite your statistics about inflation and GDP growth and macroeconomics and microeconomics, and how many economists can dance on the head of a pin. I can do all that, he continued. But what you are basically arguing to people is, do not believe your own lying checkbooks. It is their checkbooks. They are looking at it. They do not like what they see, so you have got to deal with it. That is how you win elections, he added, and we are not doing any of that.
Olympics turn political as U.S. athletes speak out against Trump. By Dominic Mastroianni. A growing number of Olympic athletes competing for the U.S. in this month's Winter Games are expressing discomfort with representing the U.S. under President Trump's administration, sparking intense pushback from the president's supporters and Trump himself. Trump attacked U.S. athlete Hunter Hess directly after Hess said he was conflicted about competing for Team USA given the country's political climate. It brings up mixed emotion to represent the U.S. right now. I think it is a little hard, Hess, a freestyle skier, told reporters during a recent press conference. There is obviously a lot going on that I am not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people are not. Just because I am wearing the flag does not mean I represent everything that is going on in the U.S. The president in a Truth Social post hours later called Hess a real loser and said it is very hard to root for something like this when watching the games. Hess's comments came days after Amber Glenn, an American figure skater, decried the administration's policies for people and the LGBTQ community. I hope I can use my voice in this platform to help people stay strong in these hard times, Glenn said. Some of Hess's fellow athletes have come to his defense, like snowboarding superstar Chloe Kim, whose parents are immigrants and said the issue hits pretty close to home for her and other competitors. I think in moments like these, it is really important for us to unite and kind of stand up for one another for all that is going on. And I think that I am really proud to represent the United States. Kim said, Vice President Vance, who received a smattering of boos from the crowd in the march when he attended the Games' opening ceremonies last week, suggested U.S. athletes who weigh in on political matters open themselves up to criticism and ask about the back and forth. You are not there to pop off about politics. Vance said when asked about U.S. athletes speaking out against the Trump administration. So when Olympic athletes enter the political arena, they should expect some pushback. The Trump attacking any U.S. athlete, several Democrats argue, crosses a line regarding civility and sends a chilling message to anyone with a major platform in sports, music, or entertainment. Who does that? What president in the middle of the Olympics attacks his own country's athletes? I mean just D. Senator Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware, explained during an interview with Hill. There is nothing more patriotic than questioning your own country when its leadership makes decisions that are so sharply out of line with our values and traditions. Representative Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, however, scoffed at the idea that any Olympic athlete would have mixed feelings about representing the U.S. because of Trump's policies. I think that is ridiculous. It is an honor to get to represent the greatest country in history in the Olympic Games. That makes no sense to me, Jordan, a former NCAA wrestler, told Hill. I have not seen some of the things they have said, but if they are disparaging the country while representing it, that makes no sense. Extra points. President Trump pardoned a handful of former NFL players on Friday, including Joe Klecko, Nate Newton, Jamal Lewis, and Travis Henry, who have been convicted of crimes ranging from drug trafficking to perjury. President Trump's pardon czar, Alice Marie Johnson, in announcing the news wrote, as football reminds us, excellence is built on grit, grace, and the courage to rise again. So is our nation. A judge granted Oregon's quarterback, Trinidad Chambers, a 6th year of eligibility last week, the latest in a slew of star college players who have looked to the courts to seek more playing time at community colleges instead of opting for the NFL. The NCAA, in a statement to the Athletics' quick fame said the rule illustrates the impossible situation created by different court decisions that serve to undermine rules agreed to by the same NCAA members who later challenged them in court. It argued the episode underscores how conflicting court decisions make partnering with Congress essential to provide stability for current and future college athletes. Days after the Washington Post decided to gut most of the sports department, the Baltimore Banner said it was expanding its sports coverage to include Washington teams. Banner editor-in-chief Horace Audrey Cooper wrote in a note to staff at a time when so much pulls communities apart. Sports bring us together. The Washington Post's decision to eliminate the sports section creates an opportunity for us to serve more Marylanders with the Banner's distinctive mix of fearless accountability reporting, engaging storytelling, and sharp analysis. Jocks on the Hill, Representative Rob Whitman, Republican from Virginia. Representative Rob Whitman, a proud Virginia Tech Hokie, answered some sports questions for the Hill. Favorite team would be the Virginia Tech Hokies. Favorite sport, baseball. I grew up playing it. My daughter plays softball and my son played. His boys play, so we are kind of a baseball family. Which athlete did you look up to the most growing up? It would have to be Henry Aaron. I worked growing up for the Richmond Braves, which was in those years the AAA farm club for the Atlanta Braves. Got to meet Henry Aaron and just thought the world of him. And Dale Murphy. Those would be my two favorites. Is there a team in your head? I do not have one that I completely dislike. I would say there is some. Kind of an adversarial mindset, but not in teams that I just viscerally hate. What sports or politics cliche resonates the most with you? Often said in his ballgame, but defense wins championships. And on Virginia Tech, how do you think new football coach James Franklin will fare? He is going to do a great job. If you look at what they have done in the transfer portal and gather the resources for name, image, and likeness nil, which is the world we live in today. Look at what Indiana did. All the naysayers of the ACC who competed in the national championship game when it came that close. Miami, I think we too can be at that level. We were there for years. I think James Franklin can bring us back. Read the coverage. It has been a busy week for NBC sportscaster Mike Tirico, who called the February 8th Super Bowl before flying to Milan to cover the Winter Games for the network. The New York Times has a fun tweet and aide with the longtime broadcaster, who claims to have made the transition from San Francisco to Italy on just 2 cups of coffee. The PGA Tour is not being subtle about it. A new ad campaign promoting the Players' Championship declares March is going to be major, prompting Sports Illustrated to examine whether the iconic TPC Sawgrass course is ready to handle a major championship for the modern game of golf. Can you believe football starts again in just more than 200 days? The Pigskin says staff at the Wings lay out the 9 biggest storylines heading into the 2026 NFL offseason. One of the top lines to follow for the Seahawks to maintain long-term success.